Before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for all of the support that you continue to give. And if you aren't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It's completely free and it really helps the channel. Also leave a like and a comment on this video if you want to help the algorithm. I also just really like talking to you guys and hearing from you all. And without any further ado, let's listen to some scary stories. This happened in Moose Lake, Alberta, Canada. I was 15 years old. I had gone to this camp since I was 10 years old. It was a Christian camp that my family attended every year. As cliché as it sounds, it started with a dream. My dreams are normally never in first person, so I was very confused when I was seeing out of my own perspective, knowing I was me. I looked around and the sky was red, with shadows rolling across the sky. I was in a hilly area, all red. I was just standing in the middle of a strange field. I knew I wasn't in reality. I started hearing a powerful voice. This voice is indescribable. It held so much power. Old, ancient, unlike anything a human could ever produce. I stiffened, feeling all of my hairs standing. The voice called out again.
Cut off your toes, cut off your toes, cut off your toes.
It repeated, a mantra until I finally woke up. You want me to do what?
Cut off your toes.
Are you God? I was Christian. I had heard of the story of Abraham, God asking him to sacrifice his son to prove his faith in God. The voice hesitated slightly.
Prove your faith to me and cut off your toes.
I was a little confused, but asked how to do it. It showed me a cleaver in a spot in the kitchen that I had never been in. It showed me exactly where it was. It showed a vision of me grabbing the cleaver and taking it to the stump and cutting my toes off under the moonlight. I was completely convinced. It made sense. I would wake up and cut off my toes. God was testing my faith. As a devout follower, I was going to do what he asked of me, trusting in God's divine knowledge. I heard barking in the real world. I began to stir. The voice told me,
No.
Frantically, but I was awake. It was completely dark. I remember thinking, perfect, it's dark. I can sneak out and cut off my toes. I could still hear the barking, so I sat up. These shadows flew off my face. The room was red, like my dream. The shadows flew across the cabin, and I looked around disoriented. My dog was hunched, snarling. He was staring at the corner. I've never seen a dog so ferocious. All of his hair was standing up. I looked at the corner he was pointed at. It was a twisted, old, gnarly tree. The energy this thing emitted was so overpowering. I was already scared and bewildered, but when I looked into its eyes, I genuinely thought I was going to die. I began to cry. I saw myself dying, being taken over by it. I saw myself in a void, locked for eternity. When it looked at me, my dog snarled again, lunging slightly and using his body to be between us. The old tree looked at my dog. Every time it looked at me, my dog growled and snarled. It gave me one last glance before sinking into the floor. I watched as the shadows followed. The room was filled with sunlight. It was not night like I had previously thought. I quickly got out of bed, grabbing my dog, and I didn't bother getting dressed. I ran out in my PJs, grabbing a leash quickly for my dog. I just started running, the adrenaline from the fear keeping me going. I was surrounded by trees. I finally collapsed and just sat down trying to collect my thoughts. My dog was licking me, trying to cheer me up. I was genuinely going to cut off my toes. I felt so disoriented. I wondered if maybe I had just dreamt it all, or maybe it was schizophrenia. It starts in your teen years. Maybe I had been possessed by a demon. I didn't want to tell anyone in fear that I'd be locked away in a psych ward or exorcised. I had to see the knife. There was no way I had ever seen it, as the only times I went to the kitchen was when I worked as a dishwasher, and I only stayed in one part of the kitchen. I had never once went to where the knife was kept. While everyone was busy with morning church, I snuck into the kitchen. The knife was exactly where it was in the vision. Throughout the day, I had other campers come up to me and ask me what happened in the morning. They had heard my dog. Many of them heard him all the way at the lake. Some came to investigate. They told me the snarls were so loud and ferocious, they thought he was attacking something. They saw me running and no one could find me until then. I had no answer. The knife had been confirmed, and now people were telling me that they heard my dog. I eventually told my sister and then my mom a year or so later. I decided not to tell my brother as he was very young and I didn't want to scare him. We went back to that camp, and every year something bad happened to me, and only me. Sprained my toes, broke my tailbone, got lice. No one else in my family caught lice. Got a terrible stomach flu that had me puking for 12 hours. Again, my family never caught it. We were always in that same cabin. The one time that we weren't, everything was peaceful for me. I haven't returned for a few years now. I decided to tell my brother because he was old enough. When I started to explain the tree demons to my brother, his eyes got huge, a look of fear crossing his face, and he stopped me. He described the creature in perfect detail. I was puzzled. I asked if I had already told him that story, and he shook his head. He asked me to finish the story, so I did. You know there's a demon at the camp. I was confused. He proceeded to tell me the story of this demon he had heard his first year at camp. This old tree demon that collected fingers. He asked if he really asked for my toes, because he had always heard it was fingers. I had never heard the story before. I know for a fact I hadn't, because if I did, I would have never touched the honeymoon cabin. There's this old cabin far from all the other cabins. You have to go off trail a bit to get to this old decrepit cabin. It's very old, and the last of the first cabins. The camp had told us about how it was dangerous because of broken glass or animals that could be in it. But I was always fascinated by it. It had a strange energy, like when you go into an old house and you can feel its history. I was enthralled by the history. The story of two lovers spending their first nights together in a cabin made specifically for them. I had never touched it before that year. I stupidly wanted to see what was inside it. I touched the door. My brother explained that he was warned never to touch the honeymoon cabin, as the demon was bound to it. He also told me that he thought the demon couldn't come to the campground. He said that he was told the campground was supposed to be the safest place. It was late, around 12 to 2 a.m., sometime around then. I was dropping off my girlfriend at the time back to her house. It was raining kind of hard, but then stopped by the time I reached my house, after I dropped her off. There's this Korean church across the road near my house, which is dimly lit. I'm looking at the church to get my keys to unlock the door, and there's a person at least 6 feet tall, staring at me from the church in the dimly lit area, which I should add, The light was illuminating this cross that was underneath the light. Anything underneath this light you can see 100%. It was only dim for me because I'm at least 100 feet away, and it was a very orangish old light. The figure that was standing in the spotlight that the light was giving was still pure black. My heart begins to start beating quicker because I start thinking to myself that this isn't right, because it wasn't. I'm still struggling to get the keys into the lock because I keep looking over and focusing on the figure. I finally have the keys in the door and I'm unlocking it to go inside. As I turn to see the thing one last time, it was now running towards me. Its arms were above its head and it was waving them, but they were super wiggly. I don't even know how to explain it. It's as if you were to strum a guitar string and the string waves and wiggles. Its arms were doing exactly that. It's about 40 to 50 feet away from me at this point, and I still can't see any facial expressions or anything. It's darker than the night sky. I hurry up to go inside and I lock the door, scared to look out the window. It's the next day, and I'm still shocked and scared. I've never seen it since then. I started calling it the Wiggler ever since. It just kind of suits it. As long as I can remember, I've been seeing an abnormally tall, thin shadow person wearing a top hat. I've seen him inside my house, outside, at school, and even at other people's houses. Sightings include seeing him briefly peeping out from behind trees or buildings outside in broad daylight, and a couple of times while using the restroom at school, I've only seen his feet standing outside the closed stall door. Even in the light, he has no features, just pure darkness, like a black paper cut out in the shape of a person. I mostly see him inside, though. He sometimes stands behind my bedroom door, and sometimes paces up and down the hallway at night. Several times while passing a mirror or other reflective surface, I can just barely catch a glimpse of him, following closely behind me in my reflection. But when I spin around, no one is there. This isn't an everyday thing, just often enough that I can't discount it as something in my eye, or catching something completely normal in my peripheral vision. And another thing is, I'm not the least bit frightened of him. He doesn't have a threatening aura at all. It's more of a sense of curiosity, maybe. I've read up on some phenomena of others seeing the Hatman, and many describe a dreadful feeling when they see him. I've never felt that, not even as a child. I was just wondering how widespread encounters are with this entity, or whatever it is. I forgot to add that it's followed me to several houses wherever I've moved. I'm an adult now, and I've seen him here, but no one else in my family has ever seen him except me. I've decided to list some of the instances where I've seen him. This is by no means a complete list, but just a few that I can remember off the top of my head. I clearly remember him standing against the wall behind the door in my bedroom at night, from the time I was still in a toddler bed. He would just watch me, and sometimes he would walk out to the door, up the hallway, and be gone. Other times I would fall asleep while he was still standing there. I saw him outside many times as a child. I recall playing with my dog, throwing a ball towards the woods that lined our backyard, and as I watched my dog run for the ball, I would see him standing at the very edge of the trees. Another instance, I was playing with my friend in a wading pool, about 5 to 6 years in age, and just saw his upper body poking around the side of the house watching me. I saw him at my elementary school, while on the swing set during recess, Again, just his upper body peering around the side of a tree. Twice, I remember using the restroom at school and seeing just his feet underneath the stall door, as if someone was waiting for me to finish. I never heard anyone come in, and he wasn't there when I opened the door. Another time, I was passing the gym and glanced in, and he was standing there, in the middle of the empty gym, watching me pass by. I saw him at a friend's house, standing in her doorway, watching us play with dolls. Once, I came out of the bathroom at my grandmother's house, and he was standing at the end of the hall. I see him in mirrors a lot too. I've been laying in bed reading a book, and I see him walk by the open bedroom door, and a few times I've come out of the bedroom and seen him standing in my daughter's room across the hall. I specifically remember one time when I thought my daughter saw him too, but she was too young to talk. I had her in the bathtub and had half turned to reach for the baby shampoo behind me. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, and when I turned to face him, he slowly backed out of the room without making a sound, almost as if he was gliding, not walking. This was in the middle of the day, under a bright bathroom light. My daughter's eyes followed him as well. A few years ago, I had the most horrific experience of my life. I read a lot of these experiences on here, but nobody seems to be afraid or affected by them like I was. I woke up around 4 a.m., lying in bed with only my eyes open. I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move a muscle. My room had a door that split in half. Don't know what you call it, as it's not a Dutch-style door. Anyhow, as soon as I laid my eyes on the door, it split open, and I could see tens of shadow people slowly making their way into the room. Very slowly they made their way in, but it sounded like hundreds of people murmuring. It sounded like hundreds of people all in one room, talking in a very low voice. All the while, they were making their way into the room, but slowly. I was absolutely frightened and shocked beyond belief. I tried my best to jump out of bed and just run, but I was completely frozen. After what seemed like an eternity, I gained my strength back, and they slowly retreated. When I could finally get out of bed, I ran out of the room and turned on all the lights in the house. I was home alone one night and talking on the phone to my best friend. She lives far away from me, so it wasn't her playing a prank on me or something. And collecting change got brought up. I told her that I love to collect and find change, not for the money, but just because it's a nice little surprise, and I find coins to be pretty cool. We hung up, and I didn't think much of it till the next day. I went back to my room after feeding the cats, and found a line of coins on my floor. There was a nickel, 2 pennies, and a quarter in a line on my bedroom floor. I was pretty tired, so I smiled, picked them up, and put them in this little can that I have change in. But later on, I got to thinking about it, and how it could have happened. I already knew the house was haunted, but I didn't expect them to be so nice, and I've been finding coins around the house ever since. I've been having this nightmare for a while. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's usually the same thing every time. I'm a little kid, and I'm in my bedroom, lying down in bed. The curtains are drawn, and I can see a bright light shining through them, sometimes red and blue ones too. Then, when I sit up, I can see shadows of people running back and forth, trying to look through my window. I hide, but I can hear people talking. When I run out of my room, I can see people coming in on the patio and into the house, and I'm always too scared to look at them. I run down the hallway to the bathroom and hide, and then I wake up. I can't explain it. It's hard for me to push myself to wake up so I can really get out of it. It always feels so vivid, and it feels so real. I've only had one incidence of lost time that I can remember, around the age I remember when the nightmares started. I went to sleep in my bedroom and woke up in my mom's bedroom with no explanation. I don't remember getting up and walking to her room at all. People suggested I ask my mom what happened on the night I remember losing time, so I did. I thought she would tell me I've been reading too many scary stories, or that she didn't remember. But she gave me some decent information. It happened when I was 6. She remembers waking up and seeing me next to the side of her bed. She said I was talking, saying, "Nobody listened to me." Then I got into bed, and I asked her to leave the lamp and TV on before I went to sleep. Then she said that soon after is when I started to have explicit nightmares about aliens and monsters kidnapping me through my bedroom window, and when I started getting really deep into TV shows about the paranormal. She doesn't remember the lights, but she also doesn't remember me opening her door and walking in. From then on, for a little while, I would wake up in the middle of the night and go to her bedroom and ask to sleep with her because I was scared. I haven't been able to sleep with the lights off since then. Again, I don't remember any of this. My mom also said that shortly before the incident of lost time, I started seeing a shadow figure in the house. I called him Steven, and for some time I was really adamant that it was spelled with a PH and not a V. My mom thought it was just an imaginary friend. Then, she saw the shadow man standing over me while I was sleeping, who disappeared into thin air when she turned the lights on. 6 years ago, my mom found out that there was a family in the neighborhood before they moved in, whose sons were drafted for the Vietnam War. Only one came home, Steven. In 1978, he took his own life, on the same day I would be born 20 years later. I don't know if the two things are related, but that was the timeline of events my mom helped me piece together. It still doesn't explain what happens completely, but at least someone remembers something. My mom said she would try to see if she could remember more, and tell me if she did.